Then I heard that Mr. Truman was going on the radio that night to announce the end of the war. And I went home and asked my father if I could stay up with him to hear the president. Do you know what he said?
I'm guessing it's either yes or no, but we both know how well I do on multiple choice.
He said, "Tomorrow's a school day. I don't want you up with me."
So you're saying your dad really knew the value of education?
Well, I'm saying my father didn't want me hanging around with him and his drinking buddies.
Okay, so let's talk about Mr. Feeny. Mr. Feeny was probably one of the best written sitcom characters, certainly the best teacher in sitcom history. I think Mr. Feeny inspired a whole new generation of individuals growing up in the 90s and onwards to become a teacher and have the sort of impact he had with his students. And I think Mr. Feeny in general just inspired people to emulate how a role model should be like. He really did set that standard. I think one of the greatest attributes of Mr. Feeny as a teacher was that he was able to see through the student. He was able to see what was inside the student, their potential, their capabilities, even if the student themselves weren't aware of, their capabilities. And I think the show depicted that dynamic, that attribute of Mr. Feeney through Eric and Shawn on the show. And Mr. Feeney is the sort of character that we don't see anymore, especially in modern, television and modern, movies. And, I think it's about time that we talk about this character and understand how well written this character was and the sort of impact it had on the individuals growing up. So I remember in one of the episodes from season two, Eric's history class is going to Europe, and because Eric isn't necessarily the strongest student, he doesn't have a very good grade, and he's not meeting the grade requirement for the trip. And so Mr. Feeney, he recommends him a tutor. And long story short, what happens is that the tutor is a girl and she is attracted to Eric, and Eric is also attracted to her. But she just kind of like assumes that like Eric isn't smart enough to do well on the test. So what she does is that she starts giving him the answers, and he takes the opportunity. He kind of like there's like a moment where he's kind of like struggling with it. He's kind of deciding, debating whether he should take the answers or not, and he really wants to do it the right way. But at the end, he just kind of like gives in and he cheats on the test, and he does well on the test. He gets an A, and because Mr. Feeney is the principal of the high school, and he lives next door to, Eric and Corey, so the message is delivered very, very quickly to his parents, and Amy and Alan are delighted. They buy him all this like stuff that would help him on the trip. And, there's that moment where like Eric really feels guilty. So what happens towards the end of the episode is that um, Eric goes to Mr. Feeney and he confesses that he cheated. So Mr. Feeney asks him, "Why did you cheat on the test?" And he's like, "Well, it's because I kind of wanted to go on the trip and I saw it slipping away, and I guess like I just wanted to do whatever I had to do in order to go on that trip." And Mr. Feeney right away he says, "Perhaps it's something much deeper. What's the actual reason?" And Eric he just kind of has to confront himself, and he realizes, and that's something Mr. Feeney knew all along, was that Eric just doesn't believe in himself. He just doesn't think he's smart enough. He just truly thinks even if he tries hard, he won't be able to do well on the course material on that class. And Mr. Feeny says, well, listen, you need to apply yourself. You need to develop the necessary tools. You're kind of giving up um, before even actually trying. You're just kind of assuming that about yourself. And so, it's moments like these where you realize that Mr. Feeny, he was such a great teacher because he could see through um, the student. He could understand what their capabilities were, what their potential was. He just had a way of knowing. And that's why, he had such a great relationship with the students. And I think part of the reason why he was able to detect the unfulfilled potential or the undiscovered capabilities in a student was because he just perhaps cared for his students. He felt deeply for them. And these are one of the examples where you can understand where Mr. Feeney was one of those teachers that really took pride in what he did, and he really took pride in nurturing these students for the world that was beyond them.
Why did you do this, Mr. Matthews?
I don't know. I really wanted to go to Europe this summer, and I guess I saw my whole trip slipping away.
That's superficial, Mr. Matthews. Perhaps it's something a little deeper?
There is no deeper with me, Mr. Feeny. I'm not a good student. Just an average guy who can get by on a nice smile. And I'm never gonna get an A, never gonna make the honor roll. That's who I am. Might as well just accept it. I have.
So another great example was one in the later seasons. I think Corey and Sean by that point are seniors in high school, and what ends up happening is that Sean, he just starts to go to a college class. Now he's not like officially enrolled; he just starts going, and he really enjoys the content. He really enjoys the class he's taking, and so he has this moment where he just kind of like chooses college over high school, and he doesn't show up to his high school classes, and Mr. Feeney, he suspends him because he wasn't showing up to class, and instead he's going to his college classes. And so what ends up happening is that he submits a paper and he gets an F, and Sean is pretty disheartened because the essence of Sean's character is that he didn't grow up in a stable family environment. He didn't grow up in that family institution where his parents would, encourage him or make him, realize of what his capabilities were as an individual. So he really lacks that, confidence in himself, and he really lacks that level of self-awareness. And this is where Mr. Feeney, as a teacher, comes in because Mr. Feeney throughout the show, he is the one who makes Sean realize of what his capabilities are as an individual, and what he's encourages him in the right sort of way. And so what happens in later in that episode is that there's that bit of a, I wouldn't say confrontation, but he has like this conversation with Mr. Feeney in the backyard where he kind of apologizes to Mr. Feeney, saying that I disrespected you and your authority, and I shouldn't have done that. And Corey says to Mr. Feeney, well, Sean is taking college level classes, and he also submitted a paper. And so Mr. Feeney's like, "Well, can I see that paper?" And Sean says, "It's no good. I got an F. Just another F to add to the pile of Fs I have accumulated over the years." And Mr. Feeney, he reads the paper, and he does say like, there's a few grammar mistakes and stuff like that, but he says it's a great paper and it's clearly college level. And there's that line where Sean says, "I never thought I would see myself in college." And Mr. Feeny says, I always saw you in college. And so, it's one of those moments, one of those scenes on the show where Mr. Feeny again, he had this capability, had this attribute to see what was inside the student, what their actual capabilities were as an individual. Because, like I said, Sean didn't grow up in that environment where he would develop a certain level of self-realization. And this is where Mr. Feeney, as a role model, as a mentor, he would um, make Sean realize that he has a certain artistic inclination. He has a certain level of depth that he never thought he had. And he basically makes his students discover a side that they never thought they had. But because Mr. Feeney is the sort of teacher who could, you know, detect that out of individuals, he was able to do that. And I think that's why Mr. Feeney was such a great teacher. I think part of the reason why some people are such great mentors and teachers, so to speak, is because they have a way of knowing. And I think that's why um, watching the show and having seen him interact with the students was so great, because it's moments like these where the depth of his character is depicted, as well as the depth of the character of the students.
It's no good.
May I read it?
It's just an F. You know? Another F to add to the scrapbook.
Well, I can see you have some grammar problems here. And the structure is way off. This entire paper is in one sentence. But it's good. Clearly college level.
Really? Because, I was kind of enjoying college. For the first time, I saw myself there.
And so I think there was a lot of nuance in this scene, a lot of reading between the lines, if you will. For example, when Sean says really, I was actually really beginning to enjoy college, and it was for the first time I actually saw myself in college. What that actually means is that, oh, I never actually saw myself in college and never thought I would be there. But he's having this moment of self-realization, you know? Um, and another example, another moment from the scene is when Mr. Feeney, he's reading Sean's paper, he's assessing it. He says there's grammar mistakes and stuff like that. But then he says, it's a good paper, clearly college level. And what he's actually indicating is that Sean has that raw talent. Despite him lacking basics, he has the raw talent. He's already, thinking at a higher level. He has developed that higher intellectual level to do well in college. And so I feel like this was such a great scene because it perfectly encapsulates Mr. Feeney's essence as a teacher, where he would help his students discover their potential and capabilities, as well as Sean's essence as a character, where he's going through this like journey of self discovery and self realization, and really becoming into his own. I feel like in the later seasons, the show really did touch on that artistic inclination that he developed towards the end of the series. And so I just wanted to talk about the scene a little bit more because it's definitely one of my favorite scenes from the show. And um, it really, like I said, it really perfectly encapsulates the essence of both Sean and Feeney's character. I hope you enjoyed my take on Mr. Feeny as a teacher. I will be making a part two on Mr. Feeny as an individual. I feel like the show had little but very significant moments regarding his life, and I feel like this character in general had a lot of nuance that needs to be talked about and needs to be discussed further. I hope you enjoyed this video and stay tuned for part two.